Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Hey there, welcome to the MemoPOD. This is your host, Peter Heck. It is great to be with you again. And I am just now realizing as I'm watching this, and I'm looking at myself, well, I'm looking into the camera, but I see myself here, and so I can see it. It's right there. It's the glare that I said I was going to get fixed, and it just hit me. I still haven't. It's a week later, and I still haven't fixed the glare. It's now become a part of me. The glare is a part of me, and it's a part of us. It's a part of the MemoPOD, and it will be there. I am going to fix it. I had some great suggestions come in on getting like a shade. My nose itches all of a sudden for some reason. Sorry. It's not running or anything. I don't think you'll see anything like that. But somebody said you get like a shade and you can put it over it. And I'm thinking what they mean is like one of those umbrella things. You've seen that before, right? When cameramen have like the umbrella. But I always thought that see if this makes sense. When you set up by the way, I'm just realizing like 90% of you listen to this MemoPOD instead of watch the MemoPOD. I mean, roughly that's what the numbers are. So this makes no sense to anybody who just listens to the MemoPOD. So I'll make this fast. But I think, I didn't turn my sound off on my phone. This is just starting really well. But I'm pretty sure that when you do that, when you get one of those umbrella things, that you point the light into the umbrella and then it reflects off the umbrella. So the umbrella faces the person, but the light faces away from the person. So I'm going to have to change this whole setup if I get one of those umbrellas. And I just don't know that I can do that. I mean, I've never taken you on a tour of this corner that I've set up, but right on the other side of the wall that's in front of me, like it's just a makeshift wall that I said, well, it's not makeshift. I built a wall right in front of me, but it only goes about halfway up towards the ceiling. On the other side is the treadmill. And beside that is the elliptical machine that we've got out here in the garage. And so I can't really be setting up the giant umbrellas because it's going to be, so I'm going to have to figure this out, and I will. This will not persist. So anyway, hope that you've had a solid week. Certainly a solid start here to the MemoPOD. There's a lot of things that I want to jump into, but I'm cognizant, I am aware of the fact that this has been the Democratic National Committee conference, the annual, not annual, the summer conference, the national convention, I guess is the way that we call them now. For the two parties, the Republicans had theirs earlier, and now the Democrats have had theirs. And it is currently, as I'm recording this, it's the third night of the 4-night event. So Kamala Harris will formally accept the nomination of her party to be the Democrat nominee. And I'm flabbergasted by it. Because if you remember, and I think I've talked about this before, back in the primary, okay, and so this would be back in the 2020 primary. Because in 2016, Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton. In 2020, who's going to face Donald Trump in 2020? It ends up being Joe Biden. But my pick, and I wrote about it at Not the Bee, it was my prediction that it was going to be Kamala Harris. Now, this is before I'd ever seen her campaign. I just thought in the Democrat Party, what really sells is the identitarian politics. What really sells is the fact that she is a diverse candidate and she's a woman candidate, and they're going to love that. And so she will be the nominee, and I thought she'd pick like Cory Booker or somebody like that to be her VP, giving the air of youth up against the Trump thing, okay? So I was totally wrong. Kamala Harris couldn't even make it to the first primary because she's a terrible campaigner. And I wrote a couple pieces as follow-ups trying to save a little face and say, listen, I had no idea she would be this bad. No clue that she was this bad of a campaigner. And you have seen glimpses of that, just glimpses of that, because the media is working very hard. The Democrat media complex is working very hard to shield Kamala Harris from any reporters and their questions. And like the one time that you saw Kamala Harris actually take a question from a reporter, she decided to field one when she's out doing one of her funny events and, oh, look at all of our joy with Tim Walz. She takes a question and it goes exactly how I remember it going in the primary, which is why she couldn't win a single vote in the Democrat primary. I'll just roll the clip here. This is how it went.
You know, your some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. That is, it's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. When we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself in that way.
Right, that is not an answer. Now listen, I know Donald Trump a lot of times doesn't provide answers. He'll take the questions and he'll respond and he will do his best, I think, to lay out exactly what he's thinking and what he's planning on doing. But I don't think he's certainly not a policy wonk. He certainly isn't going to have all of those answers. But he can at least, many times, talk intelligently about a topic. It may be full of verbose exaggeration and self-congratulation. That's a nice way of saying it. But he's not bad like that. I mean, that's just... So what I'm getting at is, I think it is distinctly possible that Kamala has hit her high water mark right now. Because as the campaign drags on, the expectation will be that she answer questions, either in a debate format or from reporters. It's going to be the expectation. And the more she, as herself, is in front of voters, the far more likely you're going to see the lady for who she is and what she is and her ability to campaign, and it isn't good. It's why this same media that's touting how great she is and how joyful she is and how exciting and hopeful she is, why they were just a few months ago talking about how Harris needs to be booted from the ticket. She's a liability. She's less popular than President Biden is, which was pretty astounding. It's the same woman. It's the same candidate. It's just right now she is feasting on media adulation and protection. And that will continue, but it's going to be difficult to sustain it through the actual election in November. It's not all going to be teleprompter speeches in front of very supportive crowds. It's just not going to be. And so I think this could very well be her high watermark. I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting she's not going to win the election. I'm talking about her popularity. And you know as well as I do that the Electoral College, it comes down to states. And if you begin with the map from 2020, if you just say Kamala Harris is likely to keep the states that Joe Biden won, unless Trump can stage some kind of surge, I know that I'm not going to win any popularity contests with this audience in saying this, but I think that the race is going to go to Harris unless Trump does something, or unless Harris just absolutely falls apart, just because of the electoral map as it is and the flaws that Donald Trump has. I don't think in the swing states, and I know it's crazy because just a few months ago it seemed like the election was over because Joe Biden was clearly toast and they didn't have a chance to replace him, and now they've done it. They just took him off the ticket and so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm certainly not making a projection on how it's going to turn out. I'm just saying right now, I think the map stacks up favorably for Harris in comparison to Trump. That can all change. And a lot of people hope that it will change. I kind of hope that maybe a new contender will arise that isn't named RFK. Which, by the way, by the time you're watching this, RFK is supposed to give a speech, and a lot of people think he's going to endorse Trump, maybe be part of the Trump team. I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have either. But I want to, since I'm recording this on Wednesday night, this is night 3 of the 4-night event, I haven't seen Harris's speech. I haven't seen some of the speeches from tonight. But I do want to say a couple things about what I've seen to this point. The Obama speeches. I do not care for the policy of the Obamas, the policy preferences of the Obamas. I don't, and I don't think this was always true. Maybe it was. It's hard to remember back when I was pompous windbag on the radio, where you kind of have to maintain this air of, at least I thought you did, an air of I'm always right, and you just need to deal with it. But I don't have any personal disdain for the Obamas. And maybe at one point I did, but I don't. I think they are tragically mistaken on some very important things. And it drives me nuts. And this is what I was going to say about their speeches. I think that they are very effective orators. Barack Obama's halting style of speaking is not my cup of tea, but I think that he can work a crowd because they are automatically drawn to him. They think that he's cool, and so they're going to love him no matter what he does. And so he can play into that. But I watch those speeches, and it will never cease to amaze me, ever. And you can credit this to the Obamas in some way, but you also have to offer a demerit to the people who react this way, that they can't see through what the Obamas are doing. Michelle Obama, the whole when they go low, we go high. Very few people go as low in politics as the Obamas. Barack Obama, in his speech, he's out there talking about the other side. They're going to be cynical about everything, and they're going to tell you that the government is corrupt, and we've got the joy and we've got the hope. Wait a second. How can you say the other side is cynical and the other side is going to tell you all this bad stuff when you yourself are telling everybody, if those people win, we're all going to turn into the Handmaid's Tale. Women are going to be in red dresses and bonnets. The fascists are going to be commanding the authority structures of the government. Free speech will be no more. And they'll weaponize the Justice Department against their opponents. And you're sitting there saying, how can you say the other side is cynical? You are the master cynic. You are the master of cynicism. And Michelle, you're talking about how when they go low, we go high. Well, at the same time, just saying the worst things, sometimes it's couched in nicer language, about your political opponents. I mean, it's always been that way with the Obamas, but it's almost a trance-like thing. And I know the word cult is overused. It's used for a lot of MAGA, Make America Great, Trump followers. and I maybe even used it in that regard, but it certainly was used with the Obama movement, that it was a cult, but it's cult-like behavior. And I think that's why the term becomes so popularized in politics, where you're, I don't even want to say unwilling, because I'm thinking of people in my life that I know that just think the Obamas are awesome. I don't even think they're capable of seeing that these are the people that largely created the political environment that we now have and loathe. We don't like the polarization, but it really began. Politics has always been contentious, and there's always been like this roller coaster of when it's really tense and really polarized, and then when it's, we're the era of good feelings and stuff. And I'm not meaning to suggest that prior to the Obamas, we were living in the era of good feelings. People had Bush derangement syndrome and all of that other stuff. I get that. But the personal rancor and my political opponent is my enemy, that really became mainstream during the Obama years. And I think maybe one of the most telling statistics is what happened to race relations in this country. Going into 2008, when Barack Obama was elected, going into 2008, surveys of the American people showed black and white, the vast majority believed that race relations in this country were at an all-time high. Interracial marriages were up, and just across the board, very good marks for racial harmony in the United States. And after Barack Obama, the first black president, gets elected, kind of in a lot of people's minds putting a nail in the coffin of the whole idea of America being a racist nation, we now have the worst standing of race relations. Okay, how does that happen? Well, you have a president that constantly fans the flame of racial discord for his own personal gain. That's what the Obama years brought. And the inability or the unwillingness of people to see that will never cease to amaze me. So yeah, I listened to the Obama speech, and that's what I come away with. I can't believe we're doing this, and people are amazed by this. All of that said, I want to share with you what I thought was the most moving moment of the DNC. And again, I didn't see the last night by the time I'm recording this. So if something happens on the last night that is more moving, then that's fine. But I look at powerful moments from the conventions, and when Donald Trump went out and gave the speech and talked about the fireman who lost his life at his rally. That was the pinnacle of, I think, the most moving moment of the speech. It really was. And really the most moving part of the entire convention. It was. Now, what was the most moving part of the DNC? The part where the air got sucked out of the room, or people were just kind of punched in the gut? Most powerful moment, maybe? It wasn't from a speech of the Obamas. I don't even know this young lady's name. And I'm going to play this for you. And I don't want you to recoil, no matter what your feelings are on the topic of abortion. And again, I would assume most people that listen to this, certainly our paid subscribers, are going to consider themselves and are going to be pro-life and believe that life in the womb is worthy of human rights, as I do. Doesn't change the power of this statement. And I don't like even responding to this kind of a statement from this young lady in a political manner. I don't think it's ripe for politics. I'm just going to play this for you. I don't think this is something that Republicans and conservatives should yawn at, should try to demean or take away from. I don't care how small the percentage is of people who experience what this young lady experienced. It's there. It happens. And so you don't just gloss over this. Let me play this for you, and then I've got some thoughts.
I was raped by my stepfather after years of sexual abuse. At age 12, I took my first pregnancy test, and it was positive. That was the first time I was ever told, you have options. I can't imagine not having a choice. But today, that's the reality for many women and girls across the country because of Donald Trump's abortion bans. He calls it a beautiful thing. What is so beautiful about a child having to carry her parent's child?
Okay. Like, that is unimaginable. That's the only word that I can give for unimaginable. To think about somebody being in that kind of situation. Okay, so I don't think that the right should ignore this, and I don't think that the right should blow this off and say, well, it's such a small percentage of the time. You don't write laws based on exceptions. That's true. I mean, and we all know that. I don't think this is like some groundbreaking thing to say that you don't write a law based on an exception. I'll give you an example that has nothing to do with the issue of abortion. You've got your brother. Your brother slips and falls and gashes his head open. My brother did that when he was a little boy. He's a little boy, he's running through my grandparents' house, slipped on the linoleum and hit his head into the fireplace. And the fireplace had what's it called? The mantle right there in front. Is that what it's called? Right in front of the fireplace. Anyway, he smacks his head on it and it busts his head open. Okay, let's say that injury was really, really bad and he was bleeding profusely. That's your brother. You got to get him to the hospital. You get in the car and you start flying down the road. Now, that road has speed limits. Are you going to go 55 miles an hour or 50 or 35 in the 35 zone? Your brother's bleeding over here. You don't want him to bleed out. Or maybe you're out in the country and you come up on a stop sign. You look around, no cars are coming. Do you stop? Or in town, you slow down at the stoplight, but you just to make sure you're not going to hit anybody, but you blow through it. Police officer pulls you over, sees what's going on there, and what's the police officer going to do? He's going to lead you in an escort to the hospital. Okay, so because in that instance, all of us would blow through the stop signs, all of us would speed, and everybody would agree, even the police officer is going to agree, that's an okay thing to do given the emergency situation. That is an exception. But does that, because that situation exists, do you then say, all right, well, we just can't have speed limit signs anymore. We got to get rid of all the stop signs because there'll be some times that you don't use them. No, you don't do that. That's what I mean when I say you don't write a law based on an exception. Which is why you will get people who will make the argument, and many on the right, the Republican Party, will make the argument, okay, so in cases of rape, as this girl dealt with, incest, which this girl is dealing with, or the life of the mother, then abortion must be allowed. We will allow abortion, but that doesn't change the fact that abortion is 99% of the time used as a form of birth control, and that should be outlawed. Okay, some people will make that argument. And so that would be one response that Republicans are going to have to this woman's speech. That, look, I'm not in favor of total abortion bans, is what they'll say. But I want to address this from a fundamental perspective, a worldview perspective. I want to address this as a Christian. How do we respond to something like that? First of all, by not belittling or downplaying the shocking emotional trauma that young woman has dealt with, and I am going to say is still dealing with and will for the rest of her life. That adult in her life, her stepfather, has taken from her her innocence, has taken from her her not just an innocence, but a mental stability and a well balance that she will never have. What he has taken from her in many ways comes down to her core humanity. That is how egregious his sin and his crime was. It is appalling to me, and it should be to all of us. But as a Christian, it is appalling to me that the state that I live in, the United States of America, the state, the government that I am under, does not treat those kinds of crimes, sexual assault, incestuous sexual assault, does not treat them like the heinous, to me, capital crimes that they are. That's what that is. You are stripping someone of their humanity, and in this case, a child, of their innocence and their humanity. There is no doubt in my mind that whatever sentence that stepfather got is not enough. So we begin there. We punish, and we should punish, from a governmental perspective, we should punish the criminal. And there's nobody that's confused about the criminal, right? Now, the second thing that I think is important is to make sure that just like we are being respectful of this young woman and her situation, we have to be honest about what was said. And the framing that I think she said that Donald Trump said that pregnancy is beautiful. I don't know, and I'm going to be the last person that's going to go out and defend the verbiage used by the former president. But I know from my perspective, there is nothing beautiful about the circumstances of that child's conception. There's nothing beautiful about rape. There's nothing beautiful about incest. There's nothing beautiful about sexual assault. Okay? And there should be no equivocation on that point. Anyone who would suggest that the act of rape or sexual assault can in some cases be a beautiful thing, no. That person should never be listened to, and certainly is not a spokesman for anything close to what Christians believe. What a Christian believes, and this is where we have to hit at the most fundamental level, and this is where I would start. We have to decide, number one, does God exist? And number two, are all human beings made in the image of God? And number three, does God have a purpose and a plan and a destiny for every human life? Now, depending on how you answer that question is going to dramatically alter what you think can and should be done relative to human rights in the womb. I believe that God exists. With evidence, I believe that. And I believe that human beings bear the image of God, and that there aren't some human beings who don't, but every human being bears the image of Almighty God. And listen, as a believer, it is that reality, the image of God, that makes a human life's rights and dignity inviolable. You have no right, no ability to destroy a being that bears the image of Almighty God. We don't. Not because of what that being does, not having anything to do with the circumstances of that being's conception, everything to do with what that being is. A human, one, made in the image of God. And then you play that forward, and you get into Acts 24, or Acts 17, verses 24 through 31, where Paul lays out the Christian worldview. And one of the things that he says is that this God, who created all things, including human beings, and we bear his image, that he knew when we'd be born, where we'd be born, why we'd be born, how we'd be born. He knew everything there is to know about us. That he has a purpose and a plan and a destiny and a calling for every human life. And if that's the case, then that child that is in the womb regardless of the horrific circumstances of conception, that child is a unique being that bears the image of God. Is there anything beautiful about making a woman carry her parents' child? No, I would never use that term. Is there something incredibly self-sacrificial about a human being willing to do that? Yeah, I do think so. Do I think that every human being has the unalienable right to live? I do. And that's what makes a circumstance like that so tragic. The question is, what made it tragic? What made it tragic was not the innocent woman. What made it tragic was not the innocent baby. What made it tragic was the horrific criminal. Punishing the innocent doesn't in any way, shape, or form bring about justice, compassion, love. All it does is add a second act of violence to what has already been a horrific act of violence. Some people say, but then the mother is forced to see in her child her rapist. Listen, those are things that I'm not qualified to tell a woman or anybody what they should do. If the baby needs to be put up for adoption, if the baby needs to go to another home, that I understand that. I get that. Again, I can't imagine going through something like that. But if you believe, and this is where a Christian comes from, if you believe that all life is a gift of God, and all life is worthy of protection, that's compelling. And that's where we are. And that's what you say to somebody like this. I don't ignore the power of a statement like that. But you have to think through what is actually being argued. And as much as that moment was powerful, a simple follow-up question, I think kind of puts it into perspective. She asks, what is so beautiful about a child being forced to carry their parent's child? There's nothing beautiful about that. My follow-up question would be, what is so beautiful in destroying the life of a child in the womb? And there's nothing beautiful about that either. From an ideological perspective, that's where a Christian is, recognizing the horror and wanting to offer as much compassion as possible to both mother and innocent baby, the two innocent parties there. That, to me, that is the only compassionate response. Now, from a legal perspective, do we believe that what is conceived in the womb is a living human being? If we believe that to be the case, then the full force of the law has to protect that living human being from the violation of its God-given natural human rights. It's something that I've pointed out before, where we are as a civilization is kind of frightening from a logical perspective, that we have abolished and banned the death penalty being used on those who commit sexual assault against their children. That stepdad can't get the death penalty for what he did to that young woman. But the innocent child that is the product of his crime can receive the death penalty. There's something that is morally incongruent there. And we're lacking in compassion and we're lacking in wisdom if we don't face that reality. Anyway, I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Peter at peterheck.com. That's Peter at peterheck.com. But I thought that was just an incredibly gut-wrenching moment in the convention. And brave, maybe, for the young woman to stand up there and acknowledge what has happened to her. That took guts in my book. How somebody who doesn't, and I'm sure she does, just want to go and hide in a hole so much of the time. your heart breaks for somebody that has dealt with something like that. So for her to come out, and do I think she's misguided about the solution? Yeah, because I don't think there is a solution this side of heaven. I don't think there is a solution. I do know that destroying an innocent life is not going to bring the peace that she deserves and that she will never have because of what that sinner and criminal did. Anyway, that's my best take on all of that, but I'm always interested in your thoughts. peterheck.com. All right, for paid subscribers, hang tight. It'll be a little bit shorter because we went longer in this first section, but I don't want you to miss something. We're going to play a little game on the other side. We're going to play a little game, and the game may make some of you upset. I don't know. That's not what I'm going for. I want to make you think. That's what I'm in it for. So we'll do that on the other side, and I've also got, if we have time, I've also got a little bit of audio, an audio montage that I think you will find humorous. Humorous and maddening. All of that for paid subscribers. If you're a free subscriber, we'd love to have you be part of our paid subscriber community as we head into the election. Clarity, biblical clarity on issues that we're trying to deal with. And I'm doing my best to provide it. And this community really helps me with that. And I'd love to have you part of it. You can just do $10 a month. Try us out for a month and see if you like it. And you get the memo on Mondays. You get the Bible teaching on Wednesdays. You get the MemoPOD, the full extended MemoPOD on Fridays. And you have the ability to comment online and share your thoughts and with all of us. So do it. We'd love to have you, or just pay the one price for the full year and get the discount. If not, I'll see you next week. If so, and all paid subscribers, I'll see you right after this.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonigal's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.